Clark is all. 3 points are raining down here for Iowa early on.
Into Wilson for 2 and the foul. Chelsea Gray.
Something shifted inside USA basketball, and almost no one saw it coming. Behind closed doors, a decision was made that didn't just change a roster, it changed my philosophy. 2 decorated veterans were out, and in the space they left behind stood Caitlin Clark, the most polarizing name in the sport.
Caitlin Clark flexing her muscles when it comes to being one of the most powerful women in all of sports.
This wasn't about hype. It wasn't about headlines. It was a calculated move, a strategic pivot that signals a new era, and a quiet admission that the old blueprint was no longer enough. The question isn't who made the team. The question is why this moment may redefine the future of women's basketball. The old guard falls for years. Team USA women's basketball operated on a simple, unspoken agreement. You earn your medals, you put in your time, you build your legacy, and in return, the program protects you. Your spot is safe. Your jersey is waiting. Your name is on the list before the list even exists. That was the deal. And for a long time, it worked. Continuity built trust. Trust built chemistry. Chemistry built dynasties. Players like Chelsea Gray and Brittany Griner didn't just represent Team USA, they were Team USA. Gray was the steady hand, the floor general who could control a game without ever raising her voice.
Handoff. Williams. Jump pass, and Chelsea Gray saw it coming. Pull up 3. Oh, Chelsea Gray.
Griner was the physical force, the interior presence that made opposing coaches lose sleep. Together, alongside other veterans, they formed a foundation that felt permanent. And that's exactly what made this so jarring. When the latest roster surfaced, those 2 names were nowhere to be found. No farewell press conference, no thank you video package, no gradual phase out where they ride the bench for one last tournament and wave to the crowd during introductions. None of that. They were simply removed. And if you've followed this program for any amount of time, you know how unusual that is. USA basketball doesn't do abrupt things. They don't do colds. They've always handled transitions with a kind of institutional politeness, a soft landing for the people who built the thing. But not this time. This time, the landing was concrete, and the message it sent echoed far beyond those 2 players. Here's what people need to understand about Chelsea Gray's situation, because the surface level take misses the point entirely. Gray didn't suddenly forget how to play basketball. She's still skilled. She still understands the game at a level most players never reach.
Chelsea Gray way outside. High off the ladder, it down. Smart decision for Lloyd to make the passes.
But the criteria changed underneath her. USA basketball stopped asking, "What have you done?" and started asking, "What can you do right now, today, against the best international teams on the planet, at the speed they are currently playing?" And that second question has a very different answer. The global women's game has evolved at a pace that caught a lot of people off guard. International teams aren't playing slow, methodical, half-court basketball anymore. They're pushing pace. They're switching everything. They're spacing the floor and launching threes with a confidence that didn't exist 5 years ago. And against that kind of movement, against that kind of speed, the evaluation becomes ruthless. It doesn't care about your highlight reel from 2021. It cares about your lateral quickness in 2025. It cares about whether you can stay in front of guards who are faster than they've ever been. It cares about whether your decision-making speed matches the tempo of a game that refuses to slow down for anyone. That's the standard now. And once you set that standard, loyalty becomes irrelevant. Not because loyalty doesn't matter as a human value, but because at this level, sentimentality loses games. Griner's exclusion hit differently, and honestly, it might be the one that stings the most. Because if there's one player who symbolized American dominance in international play, it was her.
Taurasi lets it fly. Griner on the putback. Her first professional points.
For over a decade, she was the immovable object in the paint. The person you threw the ball to when nothing else was working. The reason opposing coaches had to game plan their entire strategy around one player's physical presence. She was iconic in every sense of the word. But here's the uncomfortable truth that the coaching staff finally said out loud. The world figured her out. Not her specifically, but the archetype she represents. Traditional post dominance, the idea that you can anchor your offense and defense around a dominant big who lives in the paint, that era is closing. International teams don't fear size the way they used to. They've learned to bait post entries and collapse the lane. They've learned to pull slow-footed bigs into space and attack them on switches. They've learned that if you can force a center to defend 30 feet from the basket, her size becomes a liability instead of an asset. The game moved. And it moved in a direction that made Griner's greatest strengths less decisive than they used to be. That's not an insult. That's evolution. And an evolution doesn't send a courtesy email before it arrives. The Clark factor. Now let's talk about the name that turned this whole thing into a national conversation. Caitlin Clark.
Quick release. And hits. Caitlin Clark is all.
3 points are raining down here for Iowa early on. Caitlin Clark.
And I need you to set aside whatever you already think about her for the next few minutes, because the real reason she's on this roster has almost nothing to do with what most people are arguing about online. The loudest voices will tell you she's there because of ratings, because she sells jerseys, because she drives clicks and engagement and all the things that make television executives smile. And yeah, all of that is true. She does all of those things. But here's what those voices miss entirely. She's not on this team because of what she generates off the court. She's on this team because of what she solves on it. For years, Team USA has faced a specific tactical problem that kept showing up in international play, and nobody could fix it. Here's what that problem looks like. The best international teams figured out that if you pack the paint against American squads, clog the driving lanes, force them into contested mid-range jumpers, and slow the tempo to a crawl, you can hang with them. You might not win, but you can make them uncomfortable. You can turn a blowout into a grind. You can turn a gold medal game into a coin flip. And Team USA kept running into this wall because they didn't have someone who could stretch the floor from 30 feet with enough gravity to pull defenders completely out of position before the offense even started. Clark does that just by standing on the court. Her shooting range is so deep and so credible that defenders have to honor it from the moment she crosses half court. And when a defender commits to guarding someone that far from the basket, everything behind them opens up. Driving lanes appear where there used to be traffic. Help defenders rotate a half-second late because they're caught between two decisions. Set defenses that used to be airtight suddenly have cracks in them before the play even develops. This isn't about highlight passes or flashy no-look dimes, although she does those too. This is about geometry. This is about how one player's gravitational pull on a defense changes the math for every single teammate on the floor. USA basketball didn't add her for entertainment. They added her because the offense finally functions the way they need it to when she's the one running it. And once you see it through that lens, her selection stops feeling controversial and starts feeling like the most obvious decision they've made in years.
Last 3-point shot. You look right here, a little dribble handoff. Sulky doing a good job to free her up for just enough time as Green's trying.
The gamble behind the gamble. But here's where I need to be honest with you, because this story isn't all upside and excitement. There's a real risk here, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you something. What makes this decision genuinely dangerous isn't the talent on the roster. It's the chemistry that doesn't exist yet. Think about what the greatest Team USA squads had in common. It wasn't just skill, it was shared experience under pressure. Players who had been through Olympic moments together, who knew each other's tendencies without thinking, who could communicate with a glance across the court because they'd been in that exact situation 3 tournaments ago. This new roster doesn't have that. This group is young, fast, and loaded with potential, but potential doesn't steady your nerves when you're down 4 in a gold medal game with 2 minutes left and 80,000 people screaming. Experience does that. Repetition does that. And those things take time that this team hasn't had yet. The coaching staff knows this. They understand that they've essentially built a sports car with an incredible engine, but they haven't fully road tested it yet. Leadership roles aren't settled. The hierarchy is still forming. And international opponents, the smart ones at least, are already studying this roster for fracture points. Watch they're going to trap Clark early and often to see how the team responds when their primary creator is taken away. They're going to target the youngest players in high-pressure moments to see if composure holds. They're going to speed up the pace against a team that already plays fast, because sometimes chaos favors the team with nothing to lose. Every close game this squad plays will become a referendum on the decision. Every bad quarter will be used as ammunition by critics who want to say this is what happens when you throw away experience for the sake of change. And if this team stumbles, even briefly, the narrative will flip so fast it'll make your head spin. The calls to bring back the veterans will be deafening. The second-guessing will be relentless. And the players on this roster will feel every bit of that pressure because they know they're not just playing basketball. They're justifying an entire philosophy. The real stakes. And that brings us to the part of this story that no one is really talking about. The real stakes. Because this isn't actually about the next tournament. This is about Los Angeles 2028.
28 Los Angeles Olympic Games, and check out our city's involvement in those games.
Everything about this roster, every cut, every addition, every controversial decision points toward one target, a home Olympics. The coaching staff isn't building a team to survive the next cycle. They're building a core that will peak together on American soil in front of an American crowd with the entire world watching. That's the timeline, that's the math. And once you understand that, the decisions that seem cold start to make strategic sense. Younger players have more runway. Athletes entering their prime now will be at their absolute peak in 3 years. Players who are already on the back end of their careers, no matter how decorated, don't fit that window. It's not about what you did. It's about where you'll be when the moment arrives. This is also why the cuts feel so final. There's no implication that the veterans will be back. There's no "we'll reevaluate next year" language. The door didn't just close, it locked. And that finality is what makes this feel less like a roster change and more like a changing of the guard in the truest sense. The old contract between player and program, the one that said loyalty earns you a permanent seat, that contract has been shredded. The new one says something very different. It says you earn your place every single cycle, every single camp, every single day. And the moment you stop being the best option for what this team needs right now, someone younger and hungrier is ready to take your spot. And that's a brutal message. But it's also an honest one. So this is where the gamble stands. USA Basketball has pushed its chips to the center of the table. Not just on a player, not just on a tournament, but on a philosophy. The rise of Caitlin Clark and this new core isn't simply a roster decision. It's a referendum on how modern dominance is built. If the chemistry ignites, this becomes the moment historians point to, the pivot that reshaped international basketball. But if the pressure fractures the foundation before it sets, the consequences won't fade quietly. They'll echo, because this story was never about who made the team. It's about whether the future can survive the weight of expectation. And when the first real test arrives on the world stage, one question will linger longer than the final buzzer. Did they build a dynasty or detonate one?